All right. Podcast is now beginning.
Is
not sure when
free giveaway a redundant
actually
statement?
That's the best way to start a podcast. Yeah, is that like unthawing? Because I said the word unthaw earlier and thought, man, that's really stupid that I said that. But I said it again after that.
It's like calling a water heater a hot water heater.
Yeah.
Maybe it heats hot water.
Right. So isn't it just a water
heater? Doesn't it heat warm water? So it'd be a warm water heater?
A free giveaway.
You are listening to the Alpha BassCast with Jake Boomer, Brian Smith, and Bo Fletcher. Enjoy.
Before we went live on this show, we had a conversation about how I don't have a One Hungry Angler t-shirt. And Brian's
and
like,
how you can buy one on our website.
Oh, yeah.
So can everybody else.
But you haven't bought any Alpha Angler clothing, but have plenty of it.
Yeah. Oh, you're not sponsored by
and you don't want to go into like, you don't want to go into how I'm a sponsored angler, because if anybody could see what my boat looked like when you made the top 10 at Mojave and I didn't make the top 10 at Mojave, and so you used it like a tackle shop with no tax. Yeah, like, you know, you go on those cruises and you don't have to pay tax on the alcohol. That was you and my boat.
Rods.
Did you get your stuff back, Jake?
No, I'm not getting my stuff back.
No, he's never seen them. I have a guide trip tomorrow, and I'm so happy to rig those rods up. But who do we have on the show today, Jake?
Dude, I'm texting him right now. We are blessed with Jay McNamara again. I have to text him, tell him to jump on to put up with our BS. So let's try to get our BS out of the way before this. We get to talk to a next level genius, talking to 3 knucklehead bass fishermen. But he actually sent me a text, and this is what we're going to start with. He has hip surgery, and we're going to talk to him about it. And on Thursday, and he's fished a tournament. He got second in his first tournament of the year. He sent me a text with a picture. I'm going to find the picture. The guy's a derber. He's like, yeah, the text was, hey, I got second. Got hip surgery on Thursday. Hey, are you fishing the tournament in 2 weeks in Tri-Cities? He was in Michigan when he got second. Because I'll be there. Like, the dude doesn't, there's no recovery time. He's not a wuss. Yeah, pretty dope. I kind of want to ask him about it. I'm going to find that picture of his, oh yeah, these are the texts I get from him. Second. Take that. Oh, no, it's blurry. Blurry. I love that.
On him.
So he's going to do that tournament. That was Wisconsin. Get hip surgery and then practice and fish a tournament on June 14th. Most people don't recover from hip surgery that fast. So I think that's pretty impressive. June 14th, there is Angie Dovey for the locals. Angie Dover, charity event. Angie Dover used to be the ABA tournament director. One of my favorite people in the whole world. Come to that tournament. Look it up. Angie Dover charity tournament out of the Tri-Cities. If you can be there, 1, it's going to be great fishing. 2, it's for one of the coolest people that I started fishing ABAs when she ran them, which was like a decade ago. She was amazing. So Jay McNamara will be there. You could get his autograph.
Ooh.
On his book that you buy.
June 14th. It is a good book. I think that the sole source of that book purchase is going to be one of our websites, and we're going to work that out today. I have in our possession the last printed copies before he does another run, and I don't know when he's doing another run, so you'll be able to get them. We'll put it in the comments below where you can buy those very shortly. But I also think that we'll also be able to give one away, according to Captain Bo Raymond.
Yeah.
Yes?
We're gonna do a giveaway.
How do you propose we do that, sir?
Well, we should probably do it through social media. So
All right.
Great plan.
We'll put a little some tags and follows, and we'll get it out there here very shortly. And yeah, maybe we'll throw some other goodies in with the book.
Yeah, like a One Hungry Angler T-shirt
No,
that I have to pay
Mm.
for.
I had to buy this one.
The podcast is going to buy a T-shirt and give it away.
Maybe I'll throw in a reel instead. Everybody wants a
Wow,
reel.
wow.
Wow.
He
Yeah,
that's-
won't
getting
give away a
serious.
T-shirt, but he's giving away a reel. Ladies
I'll
and
give away a
gentlemen.
reel. And Jake's going to give away 10 rods, I think, is what he told me earlier.
10? Well, that would be one more than I have in my boat after you got done with my Mojave.
Well, in that case, I'm signing up for the giveaway. Good stuff.
Having a little bit of a technical issue getting Dr. J on. I am taking care of it. Being in that I have a degree in straight nerdism. Anyways.
Just
All right, we'll see him shortly. So, a giveaway for one of Bryant's One Hungry Angler t-shirts, not one that he's worn. It's gross.
Game one.
The book. Obviously, the book is going to be cool. I like don't want to tell any stories that he could tell because he does a better job at it. But after working with him, reading the book, I mean, he had guys like Jim Moyna. Actually, he worked with him and a couple other guys. I'm not supposed to say that, but he had an anecdote about Jim read the whole book, and anyways, he's got to tell the story. But awesome stories about it. And if you do get a hold of one, and you're an aspiring tournament angler, or actually a really good tournament angler and been doing it for a long time, it's probably still worth reading. So
it's good. I actually read through the whole thing in the last couple of weeks, and it is a good read, but more importantly, it's you want to have a journal with you when you start it.
yeah, 100%.
It's definitely a workbook. There's a lot that you need to do to kind of examine the self, which is pretty cool.
The peer evaluation is the hard part. But that's what he was talking about. No, I had Brandon do mine, and that hurt enough. That was ugly. But the hardest thing, and Jay brought it up in the last podcast, that peer evaluation is what's lacking in our sport. We're so secretive, right? We might figure something out, but we don't talk to anybody else about it. So, and a lot of times, but I do see it growing, especially at the highest level. People actually share information a lot more. Like Takumi Ito learned how to flip from hanging out with Jordan Lee. That's pretty cool, right?
That is
but
cool.
When you're trying to get better at this, you have to take people you have to find somebody that's better than you, that's willing to teach you where you suck, which that's hard to do. Cause like, especially in the regional game, you don't want the people around you getting better, right? At the pro level, it's different. I've noticed that even when we did MPFL, guys are just willing to dump information just because they realize that, you know what I mean? You're at a level where it's all liquid amongst friends. That information and that help that Bryant gave you can actually, I don't really know if you ever gave me any great information, Bryant.
No,
but
I'm sure I didn't.
Whatever. All you have to do is fish with you. If you understand the mental aspect of this game, to see how much farther advanced you are, like the things that don't bother you, that bother other people. Like one time you said, I wasn't catching fish over there, and that made me mad. So I went somewhere else and caught fish. A lot of people don't think that way. But that's also kind of a mind screw, right? Like, oh, we'll just go somewhere else, huh? Where did you have that? Why didn't you go earlier?
One of them get pissed off first.
That simple thinking works so well.
That is bass fishing. People overcomplicate the thought process of bass fishing.
Oh, there we are.
Dr. J.
Can you guys
Yes, sir.
Can you guys all hear me?
I can.
Yes, sir, we can.
Can you hear us?
Sweet.
Well, thanks for jumping on.
Oh, this is my treat.
It's awesome. I just told the guys about your schedule. I showed them the picture of your win in Wisconsin last weekend or second.
Yeah.
Followed by, why don't you give the schedule? A hip surgery, or is that a replacement surgery?
Yeah, hip replacement surgery. I got bad information from a physical therapist about a year ago who told me my artificial knees, I got 2 artificial knees, were loose. And so I chased several orthopedic physicians trying to get somebody to tell me what was wrong with my knees. And the guy who's the chief orthopedic guy for the Mariners said your knees are fine. The guy who's the chief sports medicine guy for the Seattle Sounders said your knees are fine. I finally inadvertently found out that my hips have bad osteoarthritis when they took the x-rays of my hips. Looks like a Prius ran into a Peterbilt. So so that's the day after tomorrow. So anyway.
Fun.
I've heard the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. How do you know the chief orthopedic surgeons for all of these big teams?
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people that have asked me that, Jake. I tracked them down. I went on, with the way the internet is now, top orthopedic physicians in Seattle, and I just read their credentials, and then I called them up and I said I want an appointment. So,
wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, so, did you say who you were? And they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll rush you in."
Everybody out here fishes for salmon or stocked trout, so that's. The bass fishing doc doesn't have much credibility here.
So you're going to have surgery on Thursday. Most people have an average 6-week recovery time for hip replacement surgery, but you're going to fish the Angie Dover charity tournament in 3.
I'm going to try, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you going to play hockey in between
no.
this?
No, that's his physical therapy.
I will... I'll take my time on that, although I did learn from my knee surgeries how to just do the exercises they give you and then rest. Don't try and push it and do anything else. So I hope to be back skating in a couple of months. We'll see what happens.
When was the last time you skated?
December, I think.
Okay, so it's
or maybe January, yeah.
So you got second in your last tournament.
Yes.
And since we're all fishing junkies, before we get into the mental part of this podcast, which is my favorite, we want to know, can you give us a recap on your derby?
Sure. Well, so it was a very early spring in the North Country this year, Minnesota, Wisconsin, where I fish. And the ice went out pretty early. And then it cooled off. But when we hit this 1,000-acre lake last Friday, the water temperature was in the upper 50s, and so we guessed that the fish were going to be either up shallow or moving up shallow, and so we just checked a whole bunch of spots, and halfway through the day we finally found an area of old hard stems from the previous year, and we fished shallow to mid-range to deep, and they were out on the deep edge, moving up, and swim baits, small green swim baits, and small light-colored crankbaits caught them.
And so how much weight was that? Like, what's a Wisconsin?
What do we have? They were all small males, still full of spawn. I think we had 14 pounds for 5 fish, 13.9, something like that.
And the winners had?
Just over that, they had 14.5. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's like a northern thing. You guys have millions of largemouth, but a lot of lakes they're kind of not. Is it because it's probably because they have a smaller growing season? You guys think?
Right. Yeah, a much smaller growing season, right?
Yeah. Bryant has a story about fishing in the north. He thinks it's the best. You need to tell the story because the other day, real quick, you were telling a group of guys about how many fish you caught in your first stop at Saginaw Bay.
Oh,
But the story the people that hear the story they ask twice. So you've got to tell this, like, because you and I were talking about it, and you made like a 45-minute run to get there.
Oh yeah. So it was day 2 of the MPFL on Saginaw Bay.
What time?
And I'm running. Gosh, what was that? June,
really?
July?
Wow.
Yeah, I think it was June.
It was later.
Yeah, and I was already fishing pretty shallow. I'd given up on trying to find the smallmouth, but I was putting it off. I was taking the boat off plane to go into this canal, and it was like a dredged out canal because the whole bay is super shallow, so you had to go into the channel markers. And I took the boat off plane, and when I did that, my lower unit landed on a huge rock pile, which was all of the rocks that they had taken out of the channel.
Oh no.
And this is like, it had to have been 300 yards offshore.
Yeah.
It was a foot for, it seemed like a mile.
Yeah.
So I thought I was pretty safe, but yeah, I landed right on the edge of it. It didn't do any damage, tore up my skeg a little bit. I'm like, that is the only rock pile I'm going to find within probably 10 miles of this spot.
Right.
This shallow.
Right.
So I turned the boat around and I caught, I don't know, 20, 25 largemouth.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly. Like, okay, I got my starting spot. So I run out there the third day and I pull up on the spot. I put my power poles down. I did not lift my power poles for 2 hours. In that time, I counted up to, I stopped counting at 101.
Yeah.
And they were all on, so I probably made, I don't know, 400 casts. Only 2 of those casts I didn't get a bite. And I landed 101 fish that I counted.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it was probably 140 by the time I left, but I had like 13 pounds. I was like, okay, I feel like I have tried to catch every single fish here. I need to go find a bigger one. But yeah, that is northern fishing.
Yeah.
When you find them, it is incredible.
Yeah. We had a deal like that one time in Canada. We were walleye fishing, and my buddy and I were going across the lake, and it was cloudy, and I was standing up in the back of this little 14-foot boat with a 9-horse motor, and the sun came out. And it was the same thing. It revealed a rock pile out in the middle of the lake. Nothing on the map that was anybody had any clue that this was here. And the same deal. We pulled in there, and you drop your jig in the water, and they ate it.
That's so fun.
It's incredible.
It's amazing. You'll never forget that one.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
The one guy goes. So he was telling the story last week, and he goes, So you made 3 casts and caught 3 fish? And Brian's like, no, there was 3 casts out of 1,000. I didn't catch 3 fish. The best part is he's telling this story and we're in the bag line and he's like, and I don't think I'm going to cash a check. Like I caught 140 fish.
I know. Yeah.
Neither one of us cashed a check. We both missed.
The biggest consecutive catch streak was 47.
Yeah.
Casts in a row.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is true, though, Brian. Like what you're saying, when you get a huge school like that, they're exactly they're like schooling pelagic fish, like salmon or trout or something. They are exactly all the same year class, right? They're all exactly the same. Exactly the same.
They are. They found their buddies.
Yeah, they found their buddies. Yeah.
We could go down this rabbit hole. I want to ask one more question then. So when you fish when there's so many largemouth up north, and if you find a big school like that in a tournament, do you leave it because you know that's a same year class?
Well, yeah, it depends on what you need. I mean, like Brian's saying, exactly what he's saying. You catching that many fish, you think, well, there's got to be some bigger ones in here until there aren't.
Right.
But it's really hard when you get bit every cast to say, I think I should go someplace else.
I couldn't leave.
Well,
Awesome.
No, I know exactly what that feels like. It depends on the time of the year. In the spring, if you're catching, like we were catching, 2.5 pound fish, and it was pretty late in the day by the time we found them. But we had also not caught much up to that point. So it's like, well, when you try and guess what everybody else is doing, it's not really a hot bite today. We did find some here. Maybe there'll be a bigger one here in this group. But if they're not here, the bigger ones are probably still further in a staging mode and further deeper and probably more scattered even. So maybe we should just stay here and play it out for the next couple hours, which is what we did. So,
all right, that's good coming out of winter and just second place out of the gate. So let's get into the stuff that I want to preface this segment. So segment 2 with Dr. J. The first one, a fellow competitor in the Super 60 watched it, and he's kind of newer, super good fisherman, but he's kind of branching out. I won't mention any names, but he came up and said, "Hey, I made the top 10 because of your interview with Dr. McNamara." And I was like, I'm in the same tournament, right? So like, part of me is like, all of this cool stuff we do, but at some point it's a little bit bittersweet, right? Like, anyways, so what I'd like to talk about in this one is something that I think just happened last weekend. I think his name's John Rahm. Am I correct? You guys are cool. Okay. Had what they call competitive spin out. You can tell me what it is. But in the last 3 holes, he went from 2nd to 8th, lost about $1.6 million in payout in what we call a competitive spin out, or I call just losing your mark, whatever it is. But it happens to every competitive angler, every fisherman, where things go really, really bad and you can't control the spin out. Like, it starts, that is a very mental thing, I believe. Okay. And I remember you teaching me how to deal with that, but maybe a little bit of your thoughts about what happened, because I think you believe golf and fishing are pretty similar, and then I'll let these guys ask questions about it. But yeah, that is something that can happen in fishing, correct?
well, yeah, if you fish, it's gonna happen. You're gonna get upset. If you're fishing competitively and you lose a 4-pounder and you don't get upset, it's like, what are you doing? I mean, if you're a competitive fisherman, you're going to get upset no matter what. But the analogy that I use is it's kind of like you hook a fish a long way from the boat and it jumps. No matter what you do, no matter how good you are, you usually can't stop that first jump. But we all know, anybody who fishes knows that when the fish come out of the water, they're way more likely to lose the hook than if you keep them in the water. So while you probably can't control that first jump, you sure should take control of the rest of it. Sometimes they'll still come up and waggle on the surface, but for the most part, guys who fish seriously put a lot of effort and are good at keeping the fish in the water so they don't come up and jump and spit the hook. And so the first instance, the first moment, it doesn't matter. It's like the spin out, John Rahm hits that ball in the water, on 16 or whatever it was. And if you're a competitive golfer and you're in competition to win the PGA and you put one in the water, that's a bummer. But it's what happens next that matters the most. Because obviously he had a difficult time containing his spin out. And then we've all seen examples in competitive fishing where people don't contain the spin out and it goes on, and people yell and swear and scream and break the flagpole on their boat. And lose $1 zillion in sponsorships for doing that. That wasn't immediately after that happened. That it took a while for all that stuff to transpire. So the time frame is what matters. The instantaneous getting upset, that's what it is. But then, it's the taking control of what happens after that, like the fish jumping. So, and there's a million strategies for that. And the most obvious thing that everybody does, and, those of us who are parents know, you take a time out. You give your kids a time out. They're all upset. They're fighting with each other. You put them in a separate room. Let them calm down. And you can do that you do that for yourself. Take a minute or 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it is. And if you have any kind of a relaxation exercise that works for you, do that. The best athletes in the whole world, whether they make a good shot or a bad shot, immediately forget it and go on to the next thing. And the faster you can move from what just happened to the next thing, the better off you'll be. One easy thing to do is, when you take your time out, is to tell yourself all the things that you did well up to that point. John Ram could have, as he's walking down the fairway, reminded himself about all the great shots that he'd hit all that week. To put himself, he was in contention. He was, tied with Scheffler with a few holes before that. All the shots that he'd made to get him there, he could have focused on. He could have just thought about those. All this visualization stuff works great too, because that puts you back in a healthy frame of mind. Visualize your best cast, or visualize your best fish, or visualize, Mother Nature as you ran to your spot that morning, or go back and remember the time you caught 100 fish. Anything that will refocus your attention to the positives and the fact that you're a good fisherman. A lot of guys are good at talking out loud about their strengths. The stuff you see on TV is people talking out loud about bad things and athletes swearing and screaming at each other. What you don't see are the healthy responses that people have, where they go through and talk about the things that they're doing well, or the whole deal about just repeating over and over to yourself, I'm good enough to be able to fish this circuit. I'm good enough to be able to fish this level of tournament. And whatever level you are, that you can say that. All of that puts you into a frame of mind that keeps you from being anxious and upset.
I actually have. I think you should talk a little bit more about visualization, because when I read it in your book, you have an example of where you lost a pretty good fish at the boat. You got excited and you went to boat flip it. And so the way you fixed the spin out that was about to happen was you imagined yourself catching the fish. Like, you visualized that didn't happen, that you actually fought it correctly. And I remember reading that going, yeah, whatever. But it actually works. Like, I know that sounds dumb. I skipped under a dock on Saturday. I think it was on Saturday, and absolutely lost a big one. And it haunted me for a while. And I visualized that thing actually coming to the boat. And the third cast after that, I caught the big fish of that day, or second big fish of that day. But anyways, people don't understand the power of visualization at all. I don't. Maybe I don't. Maybe other people are better, but
well, one of the biggest things, we've talked about this last time too, is it keeps you from having the negativity intrude. So maybe visualizing success doesn't cause you to catch another great fish, but it sure keeps you from being all tied in a knot, which will definitely interfere with your ability to catch the next good fish. The time that you and I fished together on Moses Lake, Jake, 3 or 4 hours into the deal, I said, so here's what I would do at 4 hours into an 8-hour fishing trip, is I would say, so here's what's worked so far. Here's what I think is the deal. And I tied on that little black and blue baby craw
BB cricket
bug, the cricket. And
Never
I said, it looks like they're eating the little stuff better than the big stuff. And so I'll go with a little bit smaller weight, and we'll keep throwing up into these bulrushes. And luckily, 10 minutes later, something, the 5-pounder ate it. And like I said, it's it doesn't always work that way, but when it does work, this is how it works. It keeps you from being all frustrated that, we fished for 4 hours and we only got 8 bites. So.
Yeah, you whooped my butt that day. And it was almost 6, by the way. It was a 579, I think. That was awesome. But I guess the visualization thing is, it's the avoidance of negativity, right? Allowing the negative thing to come in there. And one thing you said to me, because it's not just a lost fish. In tournaments, we deal with other stuff like broken motors and stuff like that. And you told me one time, when you're losing your mind because maybe your boat won't go in gear, just sit down, give yourself a second, and think about what's the best thing to do now. Yeah.
We just had that a couple of weeks ago. I was down in a couple of months ago, I guess. I was down in Florida fishing with my buddy, and he's storing his boat at his friend Scott's house. And Scott comes over and he says, "Yeah, the battery's all screwed up. I took it out and put another battery in it, and nothing works." So anyway, spent a whole bunch of time looking at the wiring. And of course, when he took the first thing he did when he couldn't get something electrical to work on the boat was to put a new battery in there, which is the last thing you would do, right? But that was the first thing that he did. And so, of course, when he hooked the wires back up, he didn't get all the wires hooked up. So first thing we did was get all the wires hooked up. And then, but the motor wouldn't start. So they went, he and Lowell, my buddy Lowell, and Scott went for 3 hours that morning, just on the trolling motor. And Lowell finally says, "Oh, let me see if I can start this thing." And he sits down and puts the motor in gear, takes the motor out of gear and puts it in neutral. And the motor, I mean, there's so many things. Like, you sit down and think, okay, so what are the options here? What are the things that could be going wrong? What are the practical pieces here? Instead of getting, because it was a perfect example of Scott was all spun out about this. He was all pissed off, and he couldn't think straight. It never even occurred to him and he was so pissed off that he got everybody else tied in a knot, and nobody else thought of the most obvious thing was put the motor in neutral before you try and start it. And that's such a really good example of the powerful effect of negativity on creative thinking, problem solving, being resilient, being open to new ideas, not getting along with other people, getting in conflict with other people. He was bitching at Lowell, and they were fighting with each other, and two of the guys walked away because they didn't want to keep having him yell at them. And so, I mean, the whole deal was just a beautiful example of the things that go wrong when you get in that negativity cycle about whatever.
Like a tunnel vision prevents. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Absolutely,
it's like a tunnel.
right. It's television. When you're pissed, watch that the next time you're with somebody who's all angry. They absolutely have tunnel vision. What they're upset about is all you hear. You don't hear about anything else, right? I mean, we've all seen that a million times.
I read through your book over the last few weeks, and there's a chapter where you talk about self-confidence, and then you compare it to performance confidence. And do you feel like establishing, like however you establish your self-confidence can kind of directly reflect the severity of a spin out, or do you think it has anything to do with how you can recover from those moments?
Absolutely. That deal about, to go back to the benign example of losing a big fish, you lose a big fish, you sit down and you can tell yourself about all the things that you did to make that play happen. The one piece that you didn't do is you didn't get them in the boat, but you found the fish, you figured out what they were eating, you figured out what the bait was they were going to eat, you made the right retrieve, you set the hook, you did everything right except the very last piece. And if you're a confident person, you say you do that all the time. If you ever listen to Kevin Van Dam talk about losing a fish, that's what he did. He just had this huge long list of things that he knew that he had done well to get to that point. The 4-pounder gets to the boat and it gets off. That's a part of fishing, of course, but he tells himself all the things that he did to make that happen up to that point. And that's a person who's confident in themselves. If you made a mistake and your hook point is bent, or you still have that plastic guard on the end of your hook from the store on your spinnerbait.
It's bright red. You're still chucking it.
Exactly. I mean, there are all those things too. But no, if you're confident in yourself, then those little things don't matter. And I mean, we've all fished with people that are like that. That no matter what happens, they're not flustered. They're not upset. I mentioned this in the book that Jay Ellis won the classic, and the pontoon boat cut between him and the shoreline where he was fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, take an act of God to let a guy catch a fish now. And of course, caught the biggest fish of the tournament on the next cast, right? Because it didn't matter to him what was going on. He knew that he was Jay Ellis and he can catch him. And
Under a pontoon boat.
You know, the circumstances as they play out make it a good example, but he was still fishing, you know.
That's awesome.
Most people would get furious about it. I mean, I fished with guys in those pro-ams, and they would just lose their mind if somebody cut them off like that, screaming, yelling, blah, 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 blah.
So we talked about the best thing to do immediately after something negative happens,
Right.
you know, to prevent the spin out. What happens if, you know, we're just having a bad day? Everything is fighting against us, and that spin out, like, it's inevitable. It happens to everybody. It's going to happen. So say we're 2-3 hours into just all negative, full-blown spin out.
Mm-hmm.
How do you change the momentum of the day? Is it the same techniques, the same like just trying to find the positives?
Not necessarily. If you're having a bad day and several things go wrong, same deal. You can't avoid that. If several things have gone south, then several things have gone south. That's a bummer. And say it's half your day, you got an 8-hour tournament and 4 hours into it and all these things have gone wrong. The best mental technique at that point is to say, I started off the day with an 8-hour tournament. I don't have an 8-hour tournament anymore. I've got a 4-hour tournament. So what am I going to do with the next 4 hours? And it's kind of like, an extension of what you've been telling me, Jake, about a couple of tournaments where you did poorly the first day and very well the second day. So after the first day, you don't have a 2-day tournament anymore. You only got a 1-day tournament. So what am I going to do today? And then you focus on that. And then it turns out much better than if you'd have just stayed in the funk that you wound up after the first day.
Yeah.
Almost just hit the reset button. Start over. We're just going to hit the reset button.
Well, and that's fundamentally what happens after every single cast or every single fish is the faster you hit the reset button, the better you are. You listen to the top athletes, and they celebrate a little bit, but most of the great athletes don't celebrate a lot when they catch a big fish, or if they whatever is happening that's going, even when it's going well, it's hard to tell with some of those guys.
100%. They put it away and don't make a noise.
Gretzky's the greatest hockey player ever. When the game was over, you couldn't tell whether he won or lost. You could tell whether he got 1 assist or 5 goals, Bill Russell's like that. My favorite basketball player of all time. You can't tell whether he's, and he in his book he talked about that. You get in the zone like that, and the score becomes irrelevant. You're just there, and everything's. And Kevin was like that too. I mean, he would get a little bit excited when he won the Classic, but for the most part, when you come in at the end of the day, you couldn't tell whether he had 20 pounds or 3 pounds.
It was closer to 20.
Yeah, usually.
It was always closer.
Usually, yeah.
20 or 19.
Yeah, 19. Yeah.
Or 39.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bad first day thing, and because that I got to spend so much time talking to you about as I was learning how to do this, I got so caught up in, because I'm very structured, got an engineering degree, right? a very structured individual, and I would be like in bed before this time. And Bryant can attest to this because he traveled with me. No alcohol. We eat healthy. We do all this stuff. And then my first day tournaments, I actually think I'm almost a little bit too hyper focused, right? A little bit too, the RPM and the brain's going too good. And you try to do too many things and you don't just kind of settle in and trust your instincts. And then after that first day, when you're in the back of the pack, which has happened to me twice now, you're sitting on like I'm sitting at the picnic table with Brian or the boys, and you're having a few beers, going, man, that was horrible, right? And then that night you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, you're like, what am I going to do? I don't know, nothing's working. And then I go out with a little bit more, not anxiety, but a little bit more pressure to make sure that I'm doing a good job in every decision I make. Maybe not as clear-minded because I had a beer or 18, depending on how bad the day was, and then have these great comebacks, right?
Closer to 18.
So, but I kind of feel like that's a personality, I actually don't know what that means. That's why I was glad you were going to come on, Jay. But the question I have with you is like, sometimes I think we take some of that stuff so, like a guy like me takes it so, like I really want to do well that I put so much pressure that some of that probably inhibits the ability to, like Bryant just goes with the flow. Like, they weren't over there, so they're over here. I was mad that I wasn't catching them over here, so I went over there and caught them, you know? Some of that is like maybe a non-negative created tunnel vision, but it's still tunnel vision.
Well, it can be if.
Possible
Go ahead.
Is it possible that Jake has to
Here we
make
go.
himself do so terribly to get himself to a mental place to do even better? I mean, I'm joking, but I'm not. Like, does he just have to go out and
It might be true.
beat himself up enough to get into that mindset?
I don't think so. Jake's very conscientious. He doesn't need a bad experience to do well. I've seen him fish. He does very well on the first day a lot of the time. But if you fish multiple day tournaments, you're going to have those days. The thing that you're referring to, Jake, about how many different variables can you organize and orchestrate to try and control what's going on, and you can spend so much time trying to control everything that you lose the spontaneity and the intuition and the go with the flow part that allows you to take all those variables and turn them into a fish catching strategy. So one of my other favorite golfers, Nick Faldo, is famous for talking about having a discussion with Jack Nicklaus, who was much older than him. And he says, Jack, when you get in these major tournaments, he says, I struggle between trying to make it happen or just trying to let it happen. And Jack said, yeah. Come on, help me out. He didn't say, but that is an interesting deal, because the top athletes, when it's happening, it just happens. The supreme performances, it's there. People are in the flow, and time goes away. Everything slows down. I mean, that whole phenomena is so similar, and it's not about consciously controlling every variable. It's about letting it happen, going with the flow, for sure. So you do all the engineering stuff prior to the tournament. Good for you. And then you fish with your heart and soul as much as with your brain.
Yeah.
So the moral of the story is you
ahead.
need to drink 18 beers before the first day.
Or 17, yeah.
Right.
I think
Maybe
some of that.
14.
Jay actually talked to me after Pedro. One of the things I didn't want to do, because I had a good pro-am there, and then I went into Pedro, and I was feeling super confident. I had a good home tournament. I was fishing really good, and but anyways, my day one, I was at the very bottom of the pack. I did horrible after that first day, and the one thing that I was I was feeling confident. I felt very confident about what I was doing, but I was so protective of that. And I only know this because I got to talk to Dr. McNamara, who analyzed it and said, here's your mistake. But what I was doing was I was protecting the feeling, because feelings are very powerful, and not like checking my live well or checking Bass Track to find out that I was, or not Bass Track, Attorney X, to find out that I was fishing horrible. Like the feeling felt so much better than I wanted to keep that feeling of fishing really well. And I kept feeling, if I keep doing this, I'm going to find them. But the truth was that had I looked at Attorney X, I'd have found out that whatever I was doing, no matter how good it felt, I sucked. Like I was stinking it up bad. Anyways, and you were talking about that, Bo, and I'll let you ask the question to kind of follow up on that horrible performance of mine. But
no, it's actually kind of a cool segue, because you were just talking about Dr. J, specifically to Jake's brain, about how he does all the building and engineering, and then what you do on that first day. Well, we have a really unique format where we don't get to get on the water for 30 days before we start the tournament.
Okay.
And so there is this off limits period for a month where, off limits, no information. So how any of us are acquiring anything is, doing map research, finding out whatever we can online. So there's all this time being done in the head, creating a pathway. And I'm just really curious how some of your mindset work applies to that kind of format, where you have 30 days to think about it, but have no empirical evidence to go off of until the day you get in the water and the green light gets hit.
That's a great question, Bo, because the most powerful tournament fishing experience I had was in a similar deal. I grew up fishing walleyes in Minnesota, and when I had kids living in Minneapolis and St. Paul, I knew there were bass in these lakes, and I thought I'd try and catch some. And I'd fish all day and catch one or none or something. And so then this guy published a bass fishing circuit, and he called it a Mystery Lake tournament. And I didn't know what he was talking about, because I was naive about anything tournament. But it said you'll get paired up with a different angler for each of these 4 tournaments. So I said, okay, great, I'll do that. Well, it turned out that some of the best anglers in Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin signed up for this deal, and they didn't announce the lake until the night before. So you didn't even get a month to think about it. You just had that day to figure it out. And I get to sit in the back of the boat with these guys and watch them figure it out. And they had, the deck was littered with rods. They had a dozen rods out, and they try this and try that, and go shallow and deep, and they just would try different things in the most relaxed way you could imagine. And sometimes they catch fish right away. Sometimes they catch fish in the middle of the day. Sometimes they catch fish at the end of the day. Sometimes they wouldn't catch them. But watching guys go through that process of they've done all the mental preparation with, so here's the time of the year, here's the kind of lake we're fishing, here are several possibilities, prepare for that, and then go fishing. And that's being completely open-minded. I mean, you can't control anything in a situation like that, except how much time are you going to spend on this before you try that. And the most creative people absolutely thrive in that sort of a circumstance.
And you can't, in your book, you even said that you can't be creative if you're stressed out.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah.
There's no. It's too tunnel vision. It's
tunnel vision. Yeah, that's a great phrase, Jake, because that's exactly what happens. You get narrowly focused when you're pissed off. You're pissed off. You're focused on what you're pissed off about, and the rest of the stuff goes by the wayside. And you can see that when you listen to people talk about anything, about the weather, about politics, about anything. If they're pissed off about one thing, that's all there is, and you can't be creative when you do that.
So we talked about controlling, the spin out. What about the like polar opposite of that? Everything's going really
Yeah,
well.
right.
How are there mental techniques to keep that ball rolling essentially, or do you just let it flow?
And if you come across the answer to that, you call me and we'll write that book, and neither one of us will ever have to work
Perfect.
again as long as
Perfect. Perfect. I was just curious.
no. So um, one of the first books on being in the zone. It's called Flow by a psychologist from the University of Chicago, Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, which is he's about 14 or 16 letters in his name, and they're all consonants. Anyway, he wrote about the in the zone experience for people in all kinds of different occupations, not just athletics, musicians, craftsmen, factory workers, taxi drivers. I mean, people that are in the zone, they describe the phenomena in almost exactly the same terms. Um, and then they talk about, what can you do to set that up? And then what can you do to keep it going? And
Mhm.
there's a lot of stuff that you can do to set it up in terms of eliminating negativity and being organized and having a comprehensive picture and maintaining a positive attitude and associating with other people that have the same attitude that you have, um, and not feeling like you have to control everything, being willing to go with the flow and letting things happen. But once it happens, uh, it goes for however long it goes, and then it stops, and we don't have any good reason. And several. This is the Flow book was written in 1978, I think, and so yeah, in the intervening 45 years, there's been a lot of research on that, and nobody's yet come up with a way to keep that going. But there are things we can do to set it up to make it likely that will happen again.
Got
Yeah,
it.
isn't it the harder you try to keep it going, the faster it goes away?
Well, there is something to be said for that. Yeah. my my best buddy I went to school with tells a story about we used to play softball together, and he came up on he went to bat on his 28th birthday back in the 1970s, and he hit the ball over the right fielder's head 3 times. And he came up for fourth at bat. And he goes, "Geez, I'm 3 for 3 with 3 home runs. Maybe I'll hit another one." He swung as hard as he could and popped up to the shortstop. Right?
Ignorance is bliss. I don't know what the score is.
Try harder, swing harder. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. In case you hit it. I will tell you the one thing you told me one time that I think about every day, especially when something bad happens, is that you should be prepared to handle at least 3 bad things happening in a given tournament day. And I thought, well, that's pretty morbid, right? What 3 bad things? But the actual knowing that it could happen and knowing that one isn't enough actually prepares you to deal with, whatever the next thing is. I'll just deal with it like I dealt with the first. And that really helps me with the spin out, with worrying about check-in times or broken motors or things that don't work. It doesn't matter. But I do remember, and I think that you told me that, and then Dr. David L. Cook wrote a book where he was talking about the same kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is a good idea to have a number like that. Sam Snead used to say, "I hit 6 really bad shots every round," and so when I hit a bad shot, it's one of my 6. And every once in a while, I have a game where I only hit 4 bad shots, but then I have other games where I shoot 8 bad shots. But that was his number. So if you've got a number like that, whatever it is, then when stuff goes wrong, it falls in that category, and then you don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about what does this mean. That means it's one of your bad plays.
Right. It's like the expectation.
Yeah, right.
Like it doesn't shock you as much, maybe, because you know that that's just life in a given day.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote that one down because it really does, I think, affect the way you look at, all right, it's just the next problem, right? And there's more of a problem solving mentality to it. So
right. And in fishing, it's an extremely high failure rate sport. I mean, this in the book, and we've talked about this. How many casts do you make in a tournament day, or how many casts do you make in a practice day, for God's sakes? And then what's a good day in terms of number of bites? Well, it's some ridiculous ratio of 1 in 100 or 1 in 200 or something crazy like that. So you make all these casts where nothing happens. You don't get pissed off at yourself for that because that's what you've come to expect. This is the way the sport that we play works.
Unless you're in Saginaw Bay and there's a rock pile.
Yeah. That's a great story, Brian. Thank you.
It was
The
weird
best
when
part
I
about
didn't get bit.
Yeah, right.
The best part about that is you would never leave Saginaw Bay and be able to fish in California. Like you'd be like, "There's not a fish in this lake. I'm out."
No.
Well, we went over. We promised we'd try not to do it.
No worries.
Thank you so much. We hope to get a couple more segments out of you. You're in our prayers for your hip surgery.
Thank you very much.
And I hope to see you. And maybe even Bo will come up for the Angie Dover. That would be really cool.
Well, that'd be really fun. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'll try to be there. Maybe we'll even have to fly Bryant up for that one. You might be in town for that. June 14th.
No.
It's the Columbia River. It's the Columbia River in June.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I would love to be there, but I'll be sweating in Oklahoma.
All right. Good for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you
we'll
so
talk
much.
soon.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
We'll see you soon.
Get another old man break.
Good God.
I'm
care.
sorry.
Just pee your pants. You'll be fine. I gotta get his book. I don't know how to read, but I'll figure it out.
Well, you could have your wife read it to you at like a bedtime story.
I'm sure you guys made fun of me the whole time. So.
Is there an audiobook?
Are you guys there? I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Nod your head yes if you can hear me.
Yeah.
We can hear you. Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Nod if you can.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Are you here?
How do you go pee and break something?
I don't know. I don't know.
There's a lot
Well, we can start the recording back from my pee break right now, if you want to.
Yeah, sure.
How cool
we
was
never
that?
stopped. That was
That
cool.
was good.
I think
That was very good.
if we had more than 6 followers, I'd put this behind a paywall because this is way too much free information.
The only thing that upsets me is exactly what I was talking about. Is guys are listening to this and they're like, they have all the natural.
To beat you.
Yeah, they're having all the natural talent in the world, and they're missing this one mental, spin outs or whatever it is.
We're making people better.
And
look at us.
Yeah. Like
Making
what
the
we're
world
providing in this podcast, people have to pay for from Dr. McNamara. Like he works with athletes. So anyways, but hey, what's knowledge if you can't share it, right?
100%.
Yeah. So that was really cool. I think we should tell some tournament stories where the spin out happened. And I've got the first one.
Okay, go ahead.
And mine was last weekend.
Mine was too.
So
nice.
Nice. So tunnel vision is if you read the book, and we will give this book away, and we'll also put them up for sale. Check the comments. We'll have a sale link to I think the last of this publication of Exceptional Psychology of Exceptional Fishing. But
are those going to be on AlphaAngler.com?
It's funny to go back through it. What's that?
Are they going to be on AlphaAngler.com?
Man, if I've got to sell them through Alpha Angler, I will. That's how good that stuff is. So I skipped into a bush, really big bush.
How far in? How many trees were you hanging over?
It was a good skip. Long story short, I set the hook on a very big one, and I got owned, like owned, and it broke me off. Which there's really, I don't think I could have made I don't think I could have done anything differently. Maybe gone in there with a heavier wire, but in my tunnel vision, I picked up the next rod I had and just skipped it back in there, and it was 6-pound test with a 4-inch Senko. Just kind of like talking to my team partner, Bryson Mort, who's an amazing fisherman, and we're just kind of going through the process together because we're both realizing that was probably a pretty significant loss, right? And it's just a habitual thing where the tunnel vision kicks in and you don't think there's another big one in this said area. Well, it was a whole school of big ones. And my decision to pick up the next rod and just go through the motions and not actually think through the next step was really dumb. Because another big one ate it. And I remember my partner going, "Did you just skip 6-pound test in there?" And I said, "Yep." And he ate it. And there's no going back, right? Like, what are you going to do? I'm not going to
Committed at that point.
I'm not going to unskip it. Rodeo now.
Yeah. You're in.
Anybody that has a brain or anybody that knows how to deal with, those kind of spin out type fish losses would have sat for 2 seconds and said, maybe the next thing I skip in there won't be a light spin or whatever. Anyways, I did actually catch that fish. Did you catch the fish? I did. I did catch that fish.
Dang.
Was there a twist of fate involved, Jake?
I don't believe in fate.
Right.
But there was Jake is I like how human we are. I like how even the best performers are human. You watch guys that are at the top of the game and man, they could never fail. And then they eventually have a human-like year or and I'm not saying that I like their failure, but it goes both ways. You have a guy that is always amazing, and then after many, many years of always being amazing, has a lackluster year. That is the human part of the sport. But it also means that if you are just barely scraping by and barely catching them like me, and we've all had it, there's hope. You know what I mean? Like if you look at Carl Jakobsen's career, most people would have quit. You know what I mean? He has resilience like nobody in the world has. And nobody thinks about his first couple of years. Now he's just a hammer. You know what I mean? So it goes both ways. You can ride the top, but we're all human. So I like that part of our sport. I like that part of any sport. It's just life, just on a bass boat, right? Was that too deep? Was that a sonic rant?
You like seeing people fail.
Yeah.
That's nice.
I love that that's how Bryant took it.
Yeah.
Even the greatest guys fail, and Jake loves that.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I had to spin out to Sabine. That was fun.
Yeah, I want to hear that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can tell by the first day. I actually went in that tournament fairly confident. I knew there was going to be a lot of guys around me. I knew there was going to be boat pressure, all that stuff. I prepared for that. I thought I prepared for that until the first 3 banks I wanted to fish. I ended up following a guy down that I had no idea was there. And I'm like, this is dumb. These are the best in the world. I cannot catch fish behind them. When in reality, you could. But I closed my mind off to that. So I ended up just fishing. But anyway, long story short, I lost 4 fish that day, 4 keepers. I ended up winning 3. One was about a 2 3/4 pounder that I launched into the air. That was the beginning of it. But I caught myself, and the worst part was I didn't change it. I didn't react to catching myself fishing way too fast, and it ended up costing me 2 bites at the end of the day that were both easily keepers. But just flipping down the bank, I'm going so fast because I'm pissed off that I've lost, 2 for 4.5 pounds. and I'm sitting on 3 fish, and I'm just going almost through the motions. Just I'm trying to stay positive in my head, but in reality, I'm going way too fast, and I'm letting that tunnel vision take over. And just flipping, and not paying attention at all. Just flip in, reel it out, flip in, reel it out, flip in, reel it out. Well, one of the times I went to reel it out, the line was under my boat. Then yeah, um, I ended up pulling that fish up close enough to be like, oh, that's a good one. But by the time that I ended up, because I wasn't paying attention that fish had bit on the fall and was swimming towards me, I had no shot, and I ended up pulling that fish up to the surface, saw it, another good solid keeper, 1.5 pound, 2-pounder, gets me into the top 50 cut, a fish that I should have caught if I was paying attention, but my tunnel vision on just covering as much water as possible had me distracted. Ended up just pulling the lure out of the fish's mouth, and never had a shot. And I did that another time too. But yeah, that was a good one. That was a solid spin out. I was proud of that one. The worst part of it was I knew I was doing it.
Yeah. Spin outs
are
recognizable. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was the most obvious thing in the world, and I still didn't. That's where, like what Dr. J said, dude, sit down on the bottom of the boat, take a 3-minute break, and reset. Like, if I would have done that, I'm not saying I would have caught him, but I would have had a better shot at catching him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the same thing. I spent all day in a spin out, and I kept telling myself to get over it. And it's one thing to say it, but it's figuring out that activity or that thing you can do to stop instead of talking yourself out of it, to actually get yourself out of it. And he speaks about it like it's something, how do they say it's simple, not easy, right? Like it's something that's such a simple concept, but it's so difficult to put yourself there. And, if he was still sitting here, I'd love to dive into where do you get that practice from? I mean, you've been practicing this for a while, Jake. Like, how did you get yourself into that practice to go from telling yourself to stop spinning to actually hitting that button or taking that moment? I mean, it's something you must have to practice outside the boat as well, right?
That's why I like that taking a break thing.
Yeah.
I've done it before, and it really does work. But it's one of those things where you're in such a rhythm going down the bank fishing, even if you're in a bad headspace, you're in such a rhythm that you can't stop it. But if you were to stop it, it would reset everything, because it would break that almost trance that you're in. Like, you're just going. If you can stop everything, like put a wrench into the whole system there, it almost acts like a reset. And I've done that a couple times where I sat down, ate a sandwich. No matter if I have 10 minutes left in the tournament or if I have, 6 hours, if you take that 3-minute break, it just totally resets everything in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
You actually did
But
that at Winnebago. You did it at Winnebago. You told me the story.
Mm-hmm.
You actually sat down and said a little prayer like, Lord, like, I can't do that. I don't remember what you told me. Yeah, you said I'm screwed. You took like a time. I remember that because I think at 1 o'clock on that day, you had nothing. You had lost everything.
I had not. I don't think I had a bite. Yeah, I just sat there.
No, you lost
to
one.
A spot.
Was that what it was?
No,
just no bites.
No, I didn't lose one. I don't think I did. Maybe I did. But I literally pulled up to the stretch I was gonna fish, and I just sat there for like 2 minutes, said a little prayer, stood up, and I'm not even kidding you. The first cast was like a 2 3/4. Just totally reset my day.
Was your prayer like, Lord, I wish Jake was here to kick me in the ass?
No, it didn't go exactly.
I'm going to say hard no. Yeah.
I was
No.
just hoping.
Lord,
I remember
I'm so
because you
glad. He's
busted
three
him
legs.
that day. You crushed him that day. I think you were in the top
Yeah.
3 after that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also a personality type about it. So that's why I love having a psychologist that's willing to talk to us bonehead fishermen, because every personality is different and the way you deal with things. And Bryant's spin out is I believe Bryant's ability to deal with spin outs is better than mine, 100%. And
I've had a lot of practice.
yeah. And I learned the hard way. That's the only way I learned. But
Yep,
I'll give you the
me
best
too.
spin out ever, because I wish there was something physical you could do. And I actually think that he said that, the visualization part, which seems so dumb, but visualize yourself actually not spinning out. You know what I mean? Actually fixes some things, which is really hard to do because we don't do that in any other part of our lives. But the day that Ish got stuck on that sandbar when we were in Martinez for the Pro Tour, and having to push him off the sandbar kind of put some realization in my head that the run that I was going to make in falling water, which is stupid, I already started stupid. So continuing stupid makes more stupid. But the water's falling. Ish is stuck on a sandbar, but I'm going to run 12 miles north in falling river water over all of these crazy sand bars and stuff like that. And on my way up, the confidence that I had that I could get around them kind of went away after I hit 2 of them really hard. And then I got stuck going into this slough. And so I'm in a fear-based spin out, and you're in it. And I'm idling into this slough, knowing that the water's falling, knowing that if you go farther upriver in a falling water situation, that it's falling any faster. And could talk myself out of it. The first 4 bites I got in there, I lost, and they were chatterbait bites. Like, you don't lose chatterbait bites, but you're so spun out. I was afraid I wasn't getting out of there. So that was a fear that I could not control, a spin out I could not fix. And I made what I thought was the only physical decision to get out of that spin out, was to just leave the area. But by the time I got out of there, the whole day was completely destroyed. Like I lost 4. So if you say, okay, well, the water's fallen, there's probably a good chance you'll still get out because you were able to get in. Doesn't fall that fast. So you're trying to do logic, but logic doesn't come into tunnel vision, right? And so, but they were still in there and they're still biting. I was in there for an hour and a half and got 4. And Yuma wasn't a great bite tournament. I had 4 or 5 bites. You know what I mean? I felt like I could probably catch a pretty good keeper count in there, but I spun out so bad I didn't land any of them, and ended up leaving to try to physically change a spin out. That was what I was trying to do. But by then the day was destroyed. You know what I mean? So that would be cool if there was some physical action, like sitting down and calming down and stuff like that. But you should try to figure out what it is for the way your brain works, right?
Got to
Yeah.
figure out what works for you.
Well, and there's always different circumstances. I mean, you called it a fear-based spin out. I mean, I lost the top 10 at Boardman last year because I let somebody else spin me out, and I couldn't get over it all day. And I actually, like, first thing in the morning, had an altercation, got me all fired up. I went immediately to another spot. I caught 3 fish right away, and they were all just short of keepers. And I got so frustrated. I was so spun up. I immediately threw my rod down, got behind the console, and took off. And the first day I was catching them on a top water, no problem. Boat flipping them all, didn't matter. Fully confident. And over the next 3 hours, I was on that top water bite, and I was losing fish left and right. I got enough out of my spin to go, I need to go back to that second spot I went, because there was fish there. Why did I leave it? And I went back, and somebody was already parked on it. And it turns out, not only did I miss that top 10 by 4 keepers, but the 2 guys that jumped me into the top 10 was the guy I had an altercation with and the guy who was on the spot that I left because I was pissed off. And it was all just because I couldn't get myself out of my own head. And I hear Dr. J was like, man, I could have pulled into a cove, sat down, screamed at the, water, taken a couple deep breaths, and gone fishing, and I probably would have been all right.
Box breathing. He taught me box breathing. You can look it up. The Navy
Is that
SEALs
4
do
seconds
it.
in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of first responders are taught that. It's significant.
Yeah. How do you think I survived traveling with Jake for 2 years?
Box breathing.
Rage screaming?
Bo, because, and I'll tell you this, Bo, because you've had a lot of success early to get to where you're at, but haven't had a lot of experience on the water. Some people would say that competitive fishing isn't an offensive. There's no offense in competitive fishing other than catching fish, but there actually is. And like the way that people, you can be very offensive to, you can't do it to like a veteran like Bryant. He'll see what's coming and he'll move on before you get in his head. But there are still really good guys that are really good about the way that they conduct themselves on the water is offensive. And the best defense I've found in those situations is to avoid anger. But it took me years to figure it out. Bryant would see it coming and he'd be gone before you got there. So you never got in his head, or he would stand his ground to the point that your offense didn't mean anything. But it is a very real thing in competitive fishing where, and Bryant, you can probably talk about this better than I am, but an aggressive angler could ruin your day in 8 seconds, especially if he can get you to respond. And I remember Gerald Sporer telling me one time that the trick they use in the elites is small talk. So you're on a spot and you're doing your thing, and a guy comes in and he small talks you. And the next thing you know, he's got your cast
right where you were.
He's up your butt. Yeah, exactly. And you're netting his fish, right? And you're like, thanks, man, for letting me net your fish that you just took from me. Like, that is a psychological thing that is a very offensive maneuver in bass fishing. And it just takes time. You know what I mean? If you're gonna get good like you did as fast as you did, you're gonna miss some of that stuff. And some of the best guys that I fish against have taught me how that works. Bryant, how do you deal with it?
Just move on. If I have somebody cut me off, the way I think about it is like, well, I already got them beat. They are so desperate to fish one spot, they cannot have anything else. I got plenty. I'll just go find some more fish. Don't
that
bother me at all.
confidence. Yeah.
Dude, because
even if it's
get all fired up over it, and it never works out well.
Even if your confidence is founded on nothing, you have no other spot to go to. You're not spun out, and you still have all of your abilities to go find the next spot, right?
Yeah.
100%.
And like, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to let somebody cut me off if I can avoid it. But people do dumb stuff in tournaments, and them doing dumb things shouldn't affect my day.
Yeah.
Now that has taken a long, long time.
No, I'm going to 100% cut you off. And it's not going to be because I want your spot. You shouldn't be. If it's on day one, don't worry about me. I gotta close the blind thing.
Yeah,
that's good.
It's not. It's hard. Don't get me wrong. Like if somebody cuts me off, now you're too dark.
I know. I don't know where the sun came from, but look at the line.
But if somebody cuts you off or does something that you don't like, don't get me wrong, I still get pissed off about it, but I'm not going to let it affect my day. There's no point. It's not worth it. And we had that conversation, though. I mean, it is not worth it. It is hard to train yourself to control your emotions in a situation like that, but you got to think they're desperate. They want that spot so bad. And then there's, obviously the etiquette thing that we could talk for hours.
We're not getting into etiquette.
Yeah, no.
I'm ready to be done.
Well,
yeah, we can wrap this up before we go down that wormhole.
Well, but to counter to that, like that was the lesson that I've taken away from that day, that weekend, was it isn't about anyone else, right? It isn't about that guy who cuts you off or whatever it is. It isn't about that other person. And that, I think, the kind of the moral of the story that I took from that moment, and Jake, even to what you said, is it's about how you handle that moment, right? Like, if I would have acted differently, I was fishing Sunday, and I firmly believe that. And it had nothing to do with anything else, because I just let it get the better of me, and you just can't. And guys do it all the time. I see it all the time. It's
It
crazy.
happens all the time.
Yeah,
It's learned behavior.
100%.
It's like a guy that can hit really good and meets the best changeup pitcher in the world. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The changeup pitcher, when he's done with him, is like, you'll never come back and hit me again. You know what I mean? And you got beat so bad that you think it'll never happen again. But it's just a matter of circumstances that you can control. You just had to learn what those circumstances felt like. You know what I mean? What does it feel like to be so pissed off, and how to deal with those so that you can move on to the next one. But it is offensive. Like they say, fishing, there's no offense or defense. 100%. That's an offensive technique that guys use. I've seen it a million times. That you find the guys that are new or kind of weak, and they're not in the game anymore. You know what I mean? And the thought process is like, well, when I tell everybody how big of a poacher you were or how big of a knucklehead you were, they're gonna hate your guts. They don't give a shit. They got the check. You're going home the loser. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
100%.
Pardon my language. Well, cool. I got weird lines now from the sun setting in my office. It feels like a Darth Vader type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little
Speaking
Star
of
Wars
offensive.
going on there.
You are offensive.
Well, thanks for podcasting with me, even though sometimes
That
I
was
want
good.
to strangle my friend.
This was
That's
good.
Thanks for getting Dr. J on.
Dude, isn't that guy the... Anyways. He's the kind of person that you need to talk to a lot. You need to find somebody in your life like that and talk to him, who always takes you back to the positive. No matter if everything around you is negative and going downhill, a guy like that will always steer you towards, the real reality. You know what I mean? You're not dying. You know what I mean? Your kids are healthy. Yeah, whatever. But
Good.
right on. Gentlemen, I appreciate you. It is now
Likewise.
time for me. Yeah.
We'll see you
Till
guys
next
soon.
time.
Thanks for listening to the Alpha BassCast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and rate us. We'll see you next time.